Hey, hi, welcome everyone to our fourth event in the series. It's called Beyond the Paycheck series, where we will today cover smart money strategies. Before we begin, UQ acknowledges the traditional owners and their custodianship of the lands on which we meet. We pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country. We recognize their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. Thank you for joining this evening, everyone. My name is Alicia. I graduated from UQ with a master's in business in 2021. I currently work as a marketing specialist at Allianz Partners, and I am a member of the UQ Young Alumni Board, and I'm a part of the Young Professionals Portfolio. We organize networking and social events to keep our alumni engaged and involved even after we graduate. We have three portfolios: Young Alumni, Future Leaders, and Social Portfolio, and we are currently accepting applications for new members. So please feel free to apply and or reach out to us if you have any questions. I'd now like to introduce our guest speaker for the day, Courtney. Courtney is a dedicated financial planner and has been working at Financial Aspirations for almost 8 years now. With a strong financial background in economics, and she graduated from UQ with a bachelor's in economics in 2007. She excels in helping clients make smart decisions about their money to build and protect their wealth. Please join me in welcoming Courtney, and please don't forget to submit your questions via the Q&A function, and we will be answering questions in the end. Thank you, Courtney, for joining us.
Thank you, Alicia. Thanks for that welcome. It makes me feel so old when you say 21 and I was 07.
You look
Okay.
young as ever.
Thank you. So general advice warning. So obviously everything I discuss tonight is not personalized advice for you. I'll just be talking generally. It doesn't take into account your personal situation and you shouldn't take it as such. So tonight I'm going to talk to you about smart money strategies. So I guess a little bit like getting back to basics, what you should be doing when you're starting out to make sure that you've got a great foundation to continue on with. I like to start with three basic rules to grow your wealth. It's really easy. Often people look for really complex answers to what you should be doing with your money, but in fact, it's really simple. You need to earn more than you spend or spend less than you earn, whichever one of those works better for you. And you need to make sure you've got multiple streams of income. So while you're working during the week, doing your 9 to 5, you need your money out there working as well. And the more streams of income that you can set up to be working for you while you're working, the more financially comfortable you're going to become and the further you'll get financially. If you have more forms of income coming in, you have more freedom, you have more options. You might be able to work less, you might be able to stop work earlier, you might be able to travel more, you might be able to take up opportunities in the future that otherwise just wouldn't have been available to you if you didn't have the backing. I think any discussion about money and what you're doing with your money and the direction that you're heading with your money comes down to a couple of things around setting financial goals, but also understanding what financial freedom looks like to you. So when we talk about making multiple streams of income and we talk about the opportunities that might give you in the future, you might not know what they look like yet, but you might have a good idea of what you're headed towards. Do you want to be traveling? Do you want to, be in your own business, traveling the world, working from your laptop? Do you want to be at home more with your family, working 2 to 3 days a week and not feeling like you're stretched financially to do that? Do you want to be retiring early? You want to stop working when you're 50? Do you want to start looking at how you can achieve that? It's really important to understand what that financial freedom looks like to you, because it will inform a lot of the decisions you make around your finances and how you allocate your money. And that comes down to goals, which I know a lot of people talk about. That gets thrown around a lot. You've probably seen this many times before. SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-bound. It's very important when it comes to money, whether it's your personal money, whether you're talking about money with your partner, which I'll touch on a little bit later. You need to know what you want before you can start planning for it. A goal without a plan is just a wish. So you need to make the goal first, and then you need to be able to articulate what that means for you. Goals come in different forms. So, you've got your short-term goals. What do you want to do? And specifically when we're talking about money, what do you want to do in the next 12 months? Is it a trip overseas? Is it, moving into a place of your own, whatever that looks like? Whatever that is, you need to go, okay, if I want to achieve this in 12 months, how much do I need to have in 12 months' time? How much do I need to be putting aside each month to get there? Sounds pretty intuitive, but a lot of people don't sit down and do the exercise. And then you need to be thinking about not only what you want to do in 12 months, what you want to do in 5 years, what you want to do in 10 years. Start to plan out your life a little bit, but plan out your finances, because what might look like a lot of money coming into your bank account right now actually needs to be allocated to start to help you meet those goals. And that way, when you get to that point, you're not kind of look around and think, how am I going to do this? Where's the deposit for my house? It's not sitting in my bank account. It all starts with planning. It's really simple and it's really easy to do. But without it, you're not going to materialize the money that you need going forward. Once you've nutted out those goals and you've started to plan them out in terms of when you want them to happen, how much you need for them, what that looks like, you need a budget. Now, I know this scares a lot of people. A lot of people don't want to track their money. Money's not exciting except when you're spending it. I get that. But even if this is just an exercise that you do at a point in time, you don't have to religiously look at what's going in and out of your bank account every day to make this worthwhile. But you need to have a general structure to what's happening with your money. And that is a two-part process. So first of all, you need to work out where your money is going. So what you're currently spending it on, and where you want it to go. Now, as a really broad rule of thumb, the graph on this screen, the pie graph, shows you approximately what it should look like. So from your paycheck every week, about 50% should be going to your essentials. This is your rent, your bills, your food, your petrol, the things that you need. And 20% should be going to things that you want. Now, this is a really important distinction, and sometimes people get a little bit confused over what they need and what they want. And it's really important to be honest with yourself. Sometimes, as I say this, everybody's got something. It might be a gym membership. It might be a Netflix, a subscription that you feel fits in the needs category. But actually, if you're completely honest with yourself, you could go and run on the street. You don't need a gym membership. You could watch the free-to-air television streaming apps. It's not desirable, and I'm not saying you have to do it, but I'm saying it's important to be honest with yourself and really specific about what you need and what goes into that 50% part of the pie and what you want, what you're spending that 20% on. Then you should be looking at short-term savings, about 20%. So this is replacing your car. So you don't have to have a loan for your car the next time you need to buy one, or holidays. So these bigger kind of 12-month, 12, 24, anything up to the 5-year short-term savings, that's another 20% that you're putting aside. And then long-term savings, 10%. This is your really long-term, your wealth building strategies. So your super, well, hopefully your super is being paid by your employer, but if not, your super, your house deposits, really big investments, potentially if you're looking at starting your own business or something really big like that in the longer term. So we're talking 5 to 10 years here. You need to be putting away 10% into those buckets. The other thing that's not in the pie, but is really important, is your emergency fund. So yes, sorry, Nina. You do need to build that safety net, and that does need to come from your budget in the initial pie. Once that safety net is built up, and optimally, that's 3 months of your expenses. I mean, 6 months would be optimal, but I often find getting people to even put 3 months into their emergency fund is a lot. You need to put that aside so that if something happens, life turns on a dime. We see it all the time. And you need to have that safety net there to catch you. And that looks like 3 months of your expenses that is easily accessible, but that you don't touch. So, a sale at your favorite retail store is not an emergency. An emergency is your boss calling you into their office this afternoon and saying, hey, sorry, pack up your desk, you're gone. Or, a medical emergency, you have to have some emergency surgery, something like that, where it's you know what an emergency is, and you can justify it to yourself if you want to take it out, but an emergency fund. So that does need to be built up before we start talking about everything else in the budget. So just to go back from there though, when you've set up your budget, and there's lots of ways to do it, and I always say to people, you need to find a way that works for you, because otherwise you're not going to do it. So it might take a little bit of trial and error. It might be manual. It might be a really fun bullet journal. It might be an app, my personal preference. Lots of banking apps now help you track your savings and your spendings. So that can really help in that initial stage where you're categorizing your expenses and looking at where the money's going. Find something that works for you. It might be taking cash out of the bank and putting it in envelopes. Not optimal long term, but for some people starting out, that's how they have to do it. You have to visualize it. You have to see what you're doing. You can have virtual buckets if your bank allows you to have multiple sub accounts of your bank account. Call them bills, call them travel, call them renovations, call them loan repayments, whatever you need to bucket your money so that you can clearly see where it's going. Sometimes as well with something like bills, you've got bills that you pay every month, your phone bill, your gym, your streaming subscription, things like that that are coming out of there. And then there's bills that you're paying annually, your car insurance, your health insurance, other ones where you can get a discount, your car rego, by paying it annually. Sometimes it helps to even separate those out, because really what you need to be doing is putting a little bit aside each fortnight or each month to pay those annual bills, and then you've got the monthly bills coming out as well. So you need a system that makes sense to you. You need a system that's not overly onerous, so that you will do it. If it's an Excel spreadsheet where you're cataloging your income and expenses every fortnight, you have to be really into that. That works for someone like me. I love looking at a money spreadsheet, but if that's not your jam, then don't do the spreadsheet. Get an app, get something that's automatically going to pick up your transactions from your banking app, and it's going to categorize it all for you. And you can open the app and say, ooh, I spent a little bit too much on takeout last week. I'm going to have to ease up on that this week. The money's not there in that sub account in my bank account. And again, of course, you can move the money from the sub accounts into your spending account when you're out on a Friday night, and it can all go. That comes down to a little bit of discipline, sorting it out, setting up the system, and then keeping your goals in mind, because that's ultimately where you're headed. If you can see that savings account growing and you're feeling comfortable, it's a really nice feeling when you get on top of your money and you know what you've got, and you've got enough to pay your bills and everything's working well. So get a system in place that works. It may be a little bit of trial and error. It may take you a little while to find the one that works for you. What not to do? Debt. 3 types of debt to broadly categorize it: the good, the bad, and the ugly. Good debt, broadly, anything that you are purchasing an asset that is going to increase in value. So home is obviously the one most people think about. Investments, be careful what you put into that category of investments. And education. If you're spending money on education, that's improving the asset of you. You're going to earn more. You're going to get better jobs long term. That's a good reason to take out debt, to fund those types of things. Bad debt is anything secured by, I'm going to call it an asset, but something that's depreciating in value. The obvious one here is a car. I'd say to people, spend as little on a car as your ego can afford, because it doesn't make sense to have debt on it. And while we need cars to get around, we need them to function, particularly living somewhere like Brisbane, it's not something that you want to be holding a lot of debt against. It's not appreciating in value unless you have very specific goals around buying vintage cars that are going to go up in value. And in fact, it's going to cost you a lot of money as you go. So that's kind of bad debt. And then your super bad debt is debt generally not secured against an asset, really high interest rates because it's not secured, unfavorable repayment terms, and for things that definitely fall into that wants category, not into the needs category. So I'm sure you can think of things in your life straight away that you're spending money on: credit cards, buy now, pay later, no interest, late fees. Those kinds of things are ones that you really want to stay away from, particularly things like Afterpay are getting people into a lot of trouble now because they're being considered as credit debt when you're going to get loans. So against a house or against a car, it severely decreases the amount your borrowing capacity when you've got those kind of debts on your record. It's also puts you so far behind the starting line for the race of life with your money when you're in debt for things that are not worth it and you're paying interest on top of it. Also, when you've got the no interest or no fees, buy now, pay later, Harvey Norman does a lot of them, interest free for 5 years. Consider the fact that you're often paying an account fee. So if you're paying $5 a month, that's $60 a year. If you've done that on a $600 washing machine, that's 10%. So you are paying interest. They're getting their money's worth out of you. So it might look like no interest, but in fact, there's those hidden little fees there. So as much as possible, avoid that stuff. And when you do get some super bad debt against your record, pay it off. Because at some point in the future, you're going to want to get some good debt, and there's different levels of good debt. You're going to get a better interest rate. You're going to get more favorable terms on the loan when you've got a better credit record and you don't have that bad debt hanging over your head. Which brings us to what you want to be doing with that money instead, which is savings and compound interest. Now, the benefits of compound interest are talked about so often, but I think it's always has such a big impact to look at an example, which we've got here on the screen now. So for example, if you put away $1,800 a year, which I think is about $60 or $70 a week, from the age of 18, we get a job, it might be a little bit later, 2 years of that, and then we go up to $3,600. It's not a lot of money for you to be putting away. If you just do that for 10 years from age 18 to 28, you've got $32,400 sitting there. We've assumed for the purposes of this that it's quite a high growth rate, 7.5%, but definitely not unachievable when you're talking about kind of basic investments over the long term. Compared with everybody else, you can see in the column to the right, they put away the same amount of money from 29 to 64. You can see they've put away 126,000 on the right there, and you've put away 32,400. And yet the difference at age 64 is 41,000. You have $41,000 more. You've put in nearly 100, let's call it $90,000 less, and you've still got more. And that is just the benefit of compound interest and time. So when people say, when should I start? The answer is now, because the minute you have any money invested at all, even in a high interest savings account, it is earning interest, which is then compounding. The next month, you're earning interest on your interest. And the effect of that over a long period of time is massive. I often use this example a lot with parents who are saying, should I put away money for my kids? You have a kid and you put away money for them from age 0 to 10. By the time they want to buy a house at 30, they're going to have a lot of money sitting there, and you didn't have to put in a lot of money to gain that financial advantage for them. So while there's a million of these compound interest examples out there, it's always worth remembering the benefit. Now, in contrast, if you had gotten the car loan instead of saving that money, the average loan taken out for an 18 to 30-year-old is somewhere between $35,000 and $40,000 for a car. Say we're talking about a 5-year term, a 6% interest rate, which is very generous. Not a lot of 6% interest rates on car loans at the moment. The repayment on $35,000 is $677 a month. That's double what we were putting away in the compound interest example in the previous slide. It's about $8,000 a year in repayments. You end up paying $40,000 for your loan over that 5-year period. If you had paid cash for the car, or maybe a slightly cheaper car, and been saving that money instead, you would have $46,600. So even more so than what you would have paid for the car on top of the car. So, you're already paying an extra $5,000 odd for the car loan. You would have had $46,600 sitting there in your savings. And then if you left that for 30 years and didn't touch it, you've got $400,000. Now, of course, we're not going to do that necessarily. Not many people put away the money and never touch it, but it's a good example. It's a good example in super. This is exactly what we're talking about in super. People kind of say, oh, do I need to worry about my super? Do I need to put away money in there? Time in the market is worth a lot more than timing the market every day of the week. But this clearly demonstrates why you're better off saving that money than going into debt and putting yourself behind before you've even started, essentially. Which brings us to investments. Once you've got that money going, once you've started saving, what should you be doing with it? Start off straight away by saying, if it seems too good to be true, it is. It absolutely is. And there's no such thing as a low risk, high return investment. If there was, I would be in it and I wouldn't have to be earning money doing this, talking to you guys tonight and giving financial advice. Actually, I probably would anyway. But that Money Smart resource that you've got on the screen now, Investing Between the Flags, is something that ASIC puts out, the Australian government. It's great. I refer clients to it all the time. I refer young people to it all the time. It's exactly what it says. It's a practical guide to investing. It's all of the basics on when you're looking for an investment, when you're looking for a financial advisor, what different investing terms mean. Highly recommend that you jump on ASIC's Money Smart website. There's lots of great resources on there anyway. They have a budgeting tool on there. They have all kinds of calculators you can play around with in terms of like debt repayment and that sort of thing. And you're talking about a government body, so they're neutral. You're not, using a bank's calculators or kind of getting sucked into product. To use the government resources, the Money Smart website's great. If nothing else, read the Investing Between the Flags PDF. Love that. When we're talking about investing, we're talking about risk and return. So when we say there's no such thing as a high return, low risk investment, we're talking about this essentially, this graph. The more risk you take in any investment, the higher return you can expect over a longer term, generally, very broadly, very generally. Lots of caveats there. For example, crypto, which I love, is a very high risk investment. It's particularly high risk because it's not regulated at the moment in Australia. So if you're invested in a managed fund or in shares, in a publicly listed fund and something goes wrong, ASIC will chase them down for you. You have backups, you have safety nets with the regulators. Crypto is not regulated. Very high risk. You can hopefully expect a very high return over the long term, but not all risk is equal. If you're invested in shares, you're invested in publicly listed shares, you're invested in managed funds, property, all high risk categories, but regulated categories. So a little bit safer, and you can expect a higher return over the long term. And when I say long term, we're talking 10 to 20 years. So if you want to buy an investment property, I say to people like 20 years minimum. Optimally, the same thing with shares. The other key mitigator for risk when you're talking about taking an increased amount of risk is diversification. So not putting all your eggs in one basket, not putting all your money into one company or into one share or even into one property, because you are concentrating your risk at that point and not necessarily guaranteeing a higher return over the long term. Diversification is key. But this is your risk return ladder in terms of when we talk about growth and defensive assets. Cash, bonds, term deposits, they're on your defensive end. You're earning income from them You're generally not seeing any capital growth. So you're not seeing the actual value of your money increase, but you're also not seeing it decrease. So you're getting that smaller amount of consistent income it's nice and safe. It's on the defensive end. And then, of course, we move into property, domestic shares, international shares. We're getting a lot riskier. We're climbing the risk and return ladder. The key things to note there are if you want to take more risk, you need to have a longer investment time frame. It's time in the market that is going to get you the returns, and it's going to get you, it's got a higher probability of getting you to where you want to go. The importance of staying invested. So a lot of people get scared. A lot of people see the value of their shares drop because you can see market values in real time. It's really scary to watch them drop. Of course, when we had the GFC in 2008, 2009, a lot of people got scared. This is a really good example of the importance of staying invested. So the blue line is the people who stayed invested. You can see that it dropped at the end of the grey period, 2009 there, but picked back up again. So within a year or two, they were back to a similar level to what they had been. The dark blue line shows investors who moved to cash for 1 year and then reinvested, and the green line shows investors who moved to cash. So you can see even people who moved to cash for a year and then got back into the market are still lagging behind at the end of the day, their counterparts to stay invested. When you have an investment strategy, believe in your strategy, back it, stay invested. If you don't need those funds, then you don't need to go to cash. You don't need to be moving around a lot. It's better to stay there and wait for it to bounce back. It's going to be better off in the long run. This is the Vanguard Index chart. This is just one of my favorites. You can always jump on their website and have a look at this. It's interactive. It's great. You can see all these squiggly lines in different colors are different categories of investments. So the ones we were talking about before, bonds, shares, corporate bonds, they're all on there. And you can see, I think they use a $10,000 investment and they show how it's grown over the years. You can look at periods in our history where it seems like we've had a huge drop, COVID, global financial crisis, and then you can see how the market bounces back. And I think this is a great illustration of the fact that the market does always bounce back. If you have those diversified investments, they will always come back. Seems bad at the time, but historically the market's never gone down and then just continued to go down to nothing. So I put that one there. Go and check that one out if you're interested in it. If you like playing around with graphs and charts, the Vanguard Index chart is a great one. And the emotional roller coaster of investing. So this is similar. Lots of people go through this. Excitement. I'm going to buy the investment. I'm so excited. I've doubled my money. It's looking really great. I'm at the top, the euphoria. And then it goes down and you start to get that anxious feeling and you're like, oh, should I sell? Should I go to cash? What's happening? It goes down a little bit more. You're like, that's it. I'm out. I'm panicking. I'm selling. I just can't deal with this anymore. And then it starts to go up again because the market is a cycle. The regret, I'll buy back in again. Oh, it's all good now. And then that feeling of excitement, I feel great about this investment when it goes up again. It's in complete contrast to, like, if you consider, a sale at the shops at your favorite clothing store. When items go on sale, the housing market drops. People are like, this is great. We're getting better value. We're going to buy it while the market's down. It's going to increase in value. For some reason, when we're talking about shares and other investments in a market exposure environment, people operate differently. They want to buy when it's at the top of the game and they want to sell when it's at the bottom. And really what you want to do, of course, is buy low and sell high. So when the market is dropping or your shares are dropping, if you're already invested, hold on to them. Cast your mind back to 2 slides ago. You want to hold on to it, stay in the market, wait for it to come back. If you are not in the market and the market is going down and you have been researching and you know what investments you want to make, that's the time to do it. Buy low, sell high. Try to, as much as possible, take the emotion out of it when you're investing, which is easier said than done with everything to do with money. But this emotional roller coaster is a good thing to remember, because the one thing you want to avoid at all costs is buying high and selling low. Managing money in relationships. This is a big one. It's really hard. So you've set up your budget, you know what you're aiming for, you've got your goals, you're saving your money, everything's going great. And then your friends want to go out on the weekend. They want to go away for the weekend. They want to go overseas and they want you to come. It's really hard. It's really hard with family and friends. Your family might want to loan from you, all sorts of things. And then, of course, your romantic relationships is the other really hard one to deal with. Depending on the relationship, be honest, I'm saving for a house. Can't come out this weekend. I'm saving for a house. So I'll come out for this part. I won't be able to do that activity. I can't loan you that money right now. I'm just got a big bill coming next month. I've just put it aside for that. Can't do it. If you don't have that kind of relationship, just lie. Take the easy way out. If you have your goals and you're going for them with your money and your friends or your family is standing in the way of that, don't let them. You need to take charge of it and you need to remember what you're saving for. It might even, your good habits, your changing habits might even rub off on them a little bit. Do the budget-friendly thing at home, host at home, do a paint and sip at home, do a potluck dinner, do movies at home. I know it's not optimal, but the long-term payoff for reaching those goals and getting ahead a little bit faster, well and truly worth it. When it comes to partners, romantic, you need to have the discussion. It's really hard. I always try to do it without judgment. You've both come from different places, different experiences, how your parents have talked about money, how you've been raised, the money stories that you have in your head are really, really different. So I say approach cautiously, maybe time it over a few dates, do something fun, have a set time that you talk about it, set joint goals, even if they're little ones, you want to go overseas together next year. But I think that open communication is key to managing money in relationships and to not have that judgment, because you might be in a romantic relationship with someone who has a very different view on debt and who has acquired a lot of debt, and that might not sit comfortably with you, but you need to start to talk to them about it. There might be a reason they have that debt. It might be a prior partner who racked it up. They're paying it off. People get really touchy about talking about money in our society, and they don't like to. And it's interesting how far and how intimate romantic relationships can get before we even talk about money. But we need to, because it can bring everything else undone if you're with someone who's operating on a very different level to you money-wise. So I think not necessarily combining your finances, because that's not always the best advice, but having those joint goals, maybe even having a joint savings account, depending on where you're at in the relationship and if it's appropriate. And just generally talking about, how do you feel about money? How do you feel about risk? Do you like taking a lot of risk? Are you really interested in the stock market, or do you not care? Do you not want to look at your money when it comes in? Just understanding where your partner's coming from and how they feel about money is always a great starting point to kind of say, well, this is kind of what I was thinking, and maybe we can do this. And, how do you do it? It's like everything in a relationship. It's never perfect. It's never fun. And you're gonna come back to it a lot of times. It's not the fun part of the relationship. But if you can get on the same page, or if you can at least, have those discussions so you can understand each other, just keep talking. That's probably very similar with friends and family as well. I think just talk about money. It's not the taboo topic that we made it. When do you need more help? I'm a big advocate, not just because I'm a financial planner, but of paying for good advice. People want to do it themselves, and I get that, and you can. It takes a lot of research though, and it takes a lot of time and effort, and you still might miss something. And often missing something to do with your super, to do with investing, can cost you much more than the cost of getting good advice and setting yourself up. So while you don't need financial advice right at the start, if you are starting to save money, if you're looking at different investment options and you want to talk to someone about what kind of investment would be best for you, what kind of risk level would be best for you. Pay for help. Shop around, interview a bunch of people, like you would with tradespeople, get a bunch of quotes, understand what each advisor is going to do for you, understand the difference between what an accountant will do for you and what a financial advisor will do for you. But it never hurts to have a conversation, even if you don't go ahead at that point, to understand what it looks like, to understand what the cost looks like. When you have your budget sorted, you have your cash flow sorted, you're starting to get a little bit of money, you're starting to think about whether those goals that you set yourself are achievable, given how much you're saving, what kind of investment options could get you there, what do you need to be thinking about? That's when you need more help. If there's a change in your life, if you are moving in with a partner, if you are having a child, if you're stuck at any sort of fork in the road financially and you're wondering which way to go, you've got a little bit of extra money. Should you be investing it or should you be paying it off your mortgage? Pay for advice, pay for good advice. It will pay off in the long run, and it will be more than worth it when you get to retirement and you're all happy. I think, yeah, I've pretty much flown through that question.
Thank you so much, Courtney. That was a great session. So insightful. I think one of my favorite sentences from the session was, "A goal without a plan is just a wish."
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that makes so much sense, hey?
Yep.
Okay, so I will just go on to the questions now. We'll be addressing both pre-submitted questions and the questions that have just come through the live now. I'll just read those out to you. How much is investment important in terms of smart money strategies in 2024?
Building wealth is always a smart money strategy, not just in 2024, but every year. Staying ahead of inflation is really important. And so some component of investing will help you do that. But really, it looks different for different people. So there's no one answer. And I think this is often frustrating with financial planning as well. There's no one size fits all. And when you're at a family barbecue and your uncle's saying, no, you need to do this, it worked for me, he's in a completely different situation, completely different set of circumstances to you. There is no one size fits all. It may be that investing is a really smart money strategy for you. It may be that repaying your debt is a really smart money strategy for you. So it depends. It depends where you're at. It depends where you're headed. It depends what you want to do. It depends what kind of flexibility and liquidity you need. Building wealth, I think, is always the goal. So no matter what you're doing, no matter what circumstance you're in, like, what are you doing to build your wealth is always the question that I kind of say to people. Always be doing something, even if it's just putting $50 a week into a high interest savings account. What are you doing to get that net wealth figure up?
Yeah. No, which is a great point. Not one size fits all. Different financial goals, like you explained. Thank you. So we do have a live question. What would be considered a medium-term investment for less than 5 years if shares are considered 10 to 20 years of investment?
So the ones that we were talking about in the earlier ones, so the defensive assets. So anything less than 5 years, you really want to limit your market exposure, because you don't want the situation where you've invested money and it drops and it hasn't had the time to come back up again before you need to use it in that time frame. So things like term deposits, high interest savings accounts, government bond notes, anything less than 5 years, that's pretty much what you're looking at to be on the safe side.
Yeah, so more traditional methods, you'd say.
Yeah. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The next one is, love this one. How to ensure your money continues to increase in value that is above inflation rather than sitting in savings?
Yes. High interest savings account, number one. If you have any money that's not sitting in your day-to-day account, there are so many high interest savings. The bonus of interest rates being so high at the moment, not great for mortgage holders, but high interest savings accounts are really high. And they're there's ones out there that, when you know the ones where, if you follow certain terms and conditions, you're getting bonus interest each month. It might take a little bit of admin to sort it out, but that's a great way, a safer way to make sure that any money that you've got sitting aside is still easily accessible and liquid to you, but is keeping up with inflation.
Mm, got it. Thanks so much. Another one, smart question: How to protect savings against inflation? Similar. If investment is a solution, what are the best practices for a salaried person? How do we start? How do we begin?
Just start. Just start. Even it doesn't have to be a lot. If you can only put aside $20 a week that you won't touch, that you absolutely won't touch, do that. Map out your salary, know your budget, and put that money aside, just starting. We looked at the compound interest, start right now. If it can be earning interest for you tomorrow, do that. When that starts to build, then investment is potentially the solution. But again, the solution might also be like, if you have a huge home loan, particularly with the way interest rates are at the moment, the solution might be just leaving your money in an offset account to offset that loan. Because what you're paying in interest on a mortgage, if you've got money offsetting that, that's essentially interest-free earnings. So that might be a really smart strategy. Super is a smart strategy for some people. It's the most tax-effective environment you can invest in Australia. So depending on your age and depending on where you are, different strategies are smart ones. But the best practice is just to know what's coming in, going out, make sure you're saving, make sure you're spending less than you earn and you're saving.
Yeah. Again, which is some such obvious insights that we should have ourselves, but so helpful to hear from someone who's been in the industry for decades now.
It's kind of depressing that there's nothing impressive that I can tell you, but it is just literally those basics. It's like, I often liken money to fitness or diet,
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
The more healthy you eat, the longer you live.
Yeah, you just have more calories out than you like that's literally that's what you have to do.
But when an expert says it, I think that just adds more value.
It makes it better.
Okay, I've picked up some questions from the chat. This one says, what if you have gotten caught up in the buy now, pay later realm? Not deep in it, but do you have any advice for people trying to get out of those schemes?
Unfortunately, the bad news is you might have to sacrifice a little bit for a little while to get yourself out of it. So it's a case of, cutting down the wants section and not buying a few things for a little while so that you can put a little bit extra onto it. Because when you're dealing with those higher interest rates, you have to hit it a lot harder than the minimum payment to get it paid off, unfortunately. But once you've done that, you will feel a lot more free than you are currently. So definitely worth sacrificing a few things now, hopefully, while you can. That might even mean things like selling stuff on Gumtree or, a side hustle, something like that to get you a little bit of extra cash in the short term to get you back to that starting block without that kind of debt and then moving on from there.
Yeah, great advice. Much needed. Are short-term high return investments really a thing?
Short-term high return investments? No. It depends what you're talking about in terms of returns. But if someone is, this comes into if it's too good to be true. If someone is promising you a short term or less than 5 years and they're saying it's going to return you a high amount, then there's also a very high risk that it won't. So you also have to be prepared to lose that money, or to not have that growth available to you at that point. To get that higher return, you need to the reason you need time in the market is because the market's going to cycle. We saw that graph throughout the presentation, right? So you need to have enough time for the market to go up, go down again, and go up. You don't want to have to be accessing it when it's down here, and that's the problem with a shorter time frame. And so that's why we generally say no. If that's being promised, it's not likely.
Yeah. Thank you. Another good question, and thank you for including the slide on managing money in relationships. We've not seen a lot of those. That's not covered in a lot of financial advice sections. Thank you. There's a question following on that. How do you suggest sharing expenses budget with your partner when incomes might slightly differ?
Yeah, which actually I was going to say in the presentation, because of course, like that happens all the time. When do you ever get into a relationship with someone and you're earning the exact same amount of
Oh,
money and
my.
you have the exact same views and you just toddle off into the sunset together? It doesn't happen. Um, it depends again on how people feel about money, how each partner feels about money, how they feel about their money. Some people are happy to say, oh, my money's your money, throw it all into a joint bank account.
Mm,
I mean, that doesn't sit great with me. I like a percentage basis. So, if, for example, if you put
mm,
70% each of your money into the joint
mm,
account and that pays for your bills, your groceries, and whatever, provided it does, and then you have 30% each that you use for whatever you want. And obviously, if you're earning more, your 30% is going to be a larger chunk and you can do with it what you want.
yeah.
Or, you agree that you're paying 50-50 for the essential expenditure, and
Mhm.
then maybe the partner who's on a higher income is going to cover
Mm,
some of the fun stuff like going out to eat or whatever.
mm,
It's just coming to an agreement with how you feel. And it's so easy to say it. And I know it's such a hard conversation to have. I
mm,
sometimes feel couples sometimes like to use me as a bit of a mediator, and I don't love that role.
mm,
But it's just understanding what's comfortable. And I think coming at it from just being honest, like, I know I'm only earning half of what you are, and
yeah.
hopefully that'll change in the future. But I can't live at the level you're living at. So either, you're going to need to do some fun stuff on your own, or we need to come to an agreement on how, what our lifestyle looks like.
Yeah.
Or, what are we going to do here? Like, let's just be honest
Mm,
about it. But I personally like the percentage thing. I think that works well, makes sense. It means if you're earning a bit more, you get a bit more in your fund money.
mm.
But everything's covered.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great advice. Percentages, yeah, makes so much sense. Thank you. The last one is it's just for all of us. What is one advice that you'd want us to walk away with from tonight's session? Um, yeah, just one great financial advice.
And less than you earn. And less than you earn. And you're 90% of the way there. Like, honestly, if you can do that, I am constantly talking to my daughter about that at the moment with her pocket money. But if you can spend less than you earn consistently,
Yeah.
then you'll be absolutely fine.
Mm, mm. Perfect. No, that's the hardest thing to do, the simplest thing to do too.
Always the way in life, isn't it?
Yeah, but thank you so much, Courtney. That was really good, really insightful. I'm sure all of us enjoyed it a lot. Um, and a lot of our viewers will still be watching it after, and they know how to reach out to you. We had your LinkedIn and everything in there. Um, yeah, thank you for coming tonight, and thank you to all the guests for joining us tonight. Um, that'll
Yeah.
be all for today.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you for
much.
taking time. Have a good night.
You too.
See ya. Bye.